Thank you, brother. Welcome, everybody, to this Sunday morning service here at Salt and Light Christian Church. The story that I will be telling you all this morning is about the song, Stand Up for Jesus." This song was published in 1858, and it was inspired by the last words of a man named Dudley Ting. Ting with a Y. And Dudley, at only 29 years old, was hoisted into the position of pastor of his church in Philadelphia after his father resigned from the position. And at first, it seemed that it was a great fit. He took to the position and was knowledgeable and qualified. However, after a short while, the honeymoon phase of the transition kind of wore off, and he began preaching fervently against slavery at this time in the 1850s. And so many of the older, more staunch members of his church raised some loud complaints against him and convinced him to step down from the position. And just 2 years after becoming the pastor of this church, he had to leave and went to start his own church with several of the men who followed him. However, his ministry did not end there. When he was 31, he left that church and established his own in the city of Philadelphia. But his ministry reached out beyond the limits of his own church. He had a heart to bring men to the Lord, to the gospel, especially men with families. And he would teach Bible study classes at the YMCA in Philadelphia. He also planned rallies, Christian rallies, to spread the gospel. At one such rally in the beginning of 1858, over 5,000 men came to this rally to hear Dudley preach. And over 1,000 were saved at this rally. During his sermon, one of his quotes, with great conviction, he shouted that I would rather lose my right arm than to neglect my duty to spread the gospel. Later that summer, almost ironically, he went on a trip, on vacation to the countryside. And while he was alone in a barn watching a corn shucking machine, he ended up slipping too close to it, and the sleeve of his shirt on his right arm got stuck in the machine, and his arm was ripped out of its socket. Just a few days later, as he knew he was dying, he told his father his last words, to tell his church, his followers that he had brought to Christ, to tell them to stand up for Jesus. And inspired by these last words, they wrote a poem. He wrote a poem titled "Stand Up for Jesus," which was preached at one of his sermons. And then a hymn writer heard this poem and was inspired to write music for it and published it later that year in 1858. And so we can see from not just the lyrics of this beautiful song, but from the ministry that Dudley had, how Christ inspired him to spread the gospel, and how his last words have been able to reach millions for that purpose. So thank you.